Even though the Democrats are ditching Iowa as the starting point for next year's presidential nominating process, it's still first in line for the Republican Party. A quick glance at the calendar there shows the state is already attracting plenty of attention from candidates and potential candidates, including Nikki Haley today and upcoming visits from Donald Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is also in Iowa. He's talking to Republican voters.
Hi.
In Iowa, breakfast is served with the hearty side of politics.
Welcome to the West Side Conservatives.
In less than a year, these Republicans will help start the 2024 presidential contest. Yet talk has already turned to the end of the campaign, revolving around one question above all.
We like him. The question is, can he win?
He, of course, is Donald Trump, who remains at the center of the conversation at a regular gathering of loyal conservatives that Kim Schmidt presides over.
Right now, he's closer to getting that majority probably in the party than anyone else. But it didn't work last time, and we're concerned about that.
A clear sense of Trump fatigue has set in among many Republicans, but not Terry Pierce. He still proudly wears his Make America Great Again hat and believes to his core the former president can win again.
I think Donald Trump is the only one that can lead us back to where we were in 2020.
Others are more blunt.
I'm a Trump supporter, and if he's not on the ballot, I'm going to write him in.
The Republican field is slowly taking shape. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis visits Iowa for the first time on Friday. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is on a 3-day tour here this week. And Trump comes Monday.
He's going to have to sell himself.
Kelly Cook is driving around Dallas County, the fastest growing in Iowa, where she leads the Republican Party. She admires Trump, but is bracing for rising attacks among GOP rivals.
We don't want two strong candidates to shred each other, and duke it out in the boxing ring and see the best man standing. So hopefully grace, dignity, poise, smarts, calculation, because in the end, we're all wanting to support the nominee.
David Oman, a Des Moines businessman, said Republicans need a fresh start.
Should the party move on from Trump?
I'm not sure he needs a third nomination. Donald Trump's message is getting a little stale, a little old. Looking backwards more than forwards.
Bob Vanderplatz is president of the influential Christian group, The Family Leader. He too believes it's time to turn a page.
There is an appetite for somebody other than Trump.
Is that Trump fatigue?
I think part of it is. I think there's a little bit of an exhaustion. I think there's also some people saying I'm looking to the next generation of leaders.
But a field too large and unwieldy, he said, will only benefit Trump.
If Trump wins in Iowa, I don't see anybody stopping him after that.
Republicans like Marianne Hanusa are listening and sizing up all of the contenders. Mindful the Iowa caucuses have a long history of humbling frontrunners and elevating alternatives.
It's not a two-man race at all. I think it'll be a wide open field, not necessarily in terms of 15, 16 people running, but I think open in terms of that everybody's got a chance at it.
Now, admiration for Trump's policies, Jake, are clear in conversation after conversation, but there certainly is trepidation, exhaustion, fatigue, you name it, about the former president himself. Some say it in whispers, some say it as loud as they can. They are ready to move on, but the question is, what does that base of the party feel? Of course, they will get a new look at a different candidate tomorrow when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis makes his first trip ever to the state of Iowa. Jake.
That should be interesting. Jeff Zeleny in Nevada, Iowa. Thanks so much. Let's discuss. Van Jones, let me ask you, as DeSantis heads to Iowa to meet with state legislators, the state Senate in Florida, the state Senate there just passed a bill that would require students to use school bathrooms that align with their gender assigned at birth. We know that education and these school issues as culture war issues have been successful at the state level. Both for DeSantis and for Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who might be asked about this issue tonight in our CNN town hall. Do you think more broadly the fight over these education issues make people like DeSantis or Youngkin standouts in this Republican presidential primary process?
Well, I think that they have zeroed in on something that is real, which is I do think that parents coming out of COVID, we were much more just aware of what was going on in our schools, and people, I think, this idea of parents' rights, I think really resonated. But that doesn't mean that you should run for office as a bully and as a bigot, targeting transgender kids and making them the punching bag for a whole political party. These are very fragile and vulnerable young people by all standards and estimations. And I just think it's a shock. I mean, there's so many things that are going on in our schools and with our kids that this is the issue you're going to pick on, and this is the population you're going to pick on. I think it's disgusting. It may work, but that doesn't make it right.
Scott, what do you think? Is there any risk for the Republican Party talking about these trans issues and trans kids as often as they do?
I think the overall issue of schools is going to resonate inside the Republican primary. It's not just about, the issue of the bathrooms that you brought up. It's just about, and I agree with Van, parents are now a lot more aware of what's going on in school. And one thing they're aware of is what's in the curriculum and why are the kids in my school not able to read, write, and do arithmetic. And I think there are a lot of parents out there who think there are a lot of people involved in leadership of schools who care more about these cultural issues, that cultural agenda, than they do about the core thing that you expect a school to do, which is to teach students. And so I think if I were advising a candidate on these matters, I would say, I think talking about the bathrooms is fine, but you got to couple it with what do you want out of a school? And I want them to read, write, and be able to do math. That's what any parent wants. And so I think as long as you are touching on both, it could be a resonant topic in both the primary and in the general election, frankly.
Van, the senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein, today says that leading GOP candidates are trying to ignite a procession of culture war firefights. He writes, quote, Biden, by contrast, is working to downplay or diffuse almost all cultural issues. Instead, Biden is targeting his communication with the public almost exclusively on delivering tangible economic benefits to working class families, such as lower costs for insulin, the protection of Social Security and Medicare, and the creation of more manufacturing jobs. There is another view of this strategy, although agreeing that it is a strategy. Here's how Bill Maher put it. We're going to rerun our special with him tomorrow night. And here's something, I don't think this made the final cut, but it's relevant to this point.
Joe Biden does not, I think his default setting for this is just, I don't argue with the far left on those issues that are important to them. I mean, for some reason, Gen Z thinks of trans as the civil rights issue of their time. And Joe's just not going to fight them on that.
How do you interpret Biden's hands-off approach on some of these social issues?
Well, I think that he is more in the traditional mold that you bring, that common economic pain can create common economic purpose. And so I think he's trying to focus the conversation on the shared economic pain of the vast, vast majority of Americans that are still coming out of this COVID crisis, dealing with inflation, afraid about a recession. And when you look at his agenda is a pocketbook, lunch pail set of issues, which is what he's been about the whole time. And I think he's clear. I mean, I think he's appointed transgender people. I think he's clearly on the side of civil rights for everybody. But I think he's smart not to get pulled too far into this, because at the end of the day, his ability to build a massive majority, a winning majority, is going to be based more on his economic ideas, and the Republicans are out of economic ideas and less on these issues.
Scott, there's another issue that Republicans talk a lot about, and that is crime. Republicans, in fact, have a new ad hitting House Democrats for backing the D.C. crime law, or at least not going against D.C.'s decisions on its own city, which would lower maximum penalties for some violent offenses. Here's an example of that ad targeting, I believe it's Abigail Spanberger, a Democratic congresswoman from Virginia. Take a listen.
Murderers given reduced sentences. Carjackers given slaps on the wrist by pandering politicians. Not just the D.C. City Council. 173 House Democrats voted to support reduced sentences for violent crimes. So crazy, even President Biden won't support the anarchy. What's next? Defund the police? Tell Abigail Spanberger to keep Virginia families safe.
What do you think, Scott? Is that effective?
Oh, yeah, it's going to work. And it's the reason Joe Biden changed his position on this topic. He knows he can't carry this position that they're taking in Washington, D.C. into a re-election campaign, just like he knows he can't carry some of the immigration problems into a re-election campaign. It's why he's considering, I guess, going back to some of the Trump era policies on immigration that has Democrats up in arms. He's got a real issue with the idea of overall national security. And by national, I mean what's going on right here. Cities with crime, the border, you've got the Chinese balloon thing that still, was totally mishandled and miscommunicated to the American people. I think there is a sense that the Biden administration doesn't have its arms around the security of our homeland. And so it's pretty easy to see why he had to change his position on this. And I think it's totally right for Republicans to hit on it, because you do have a lot of Democrats out there that are advocating for exactly what the ad said. And that's not going to play in this upcoming election. It's not going to play anywhere because we've got cities drowning in crime out there.
Van, last word.
I think this is just a demagoguery. It is inconceivable that some of these things are overcharged, and you can make adjustments without saying it's anarchy. But what you have now is just pure demagoguery. Nobody wants to get the crime problem under control more than people who live in cities affected by it.